So you guys are in quite a fight for individual freedom. I think we should talk about what you're dealing with right now and the fact that you guys are providing services to adults, and there's attempts to cancel that. We have our cancel culture going on right now, and so there's people out trying to cancel what you're doing. But if I understand correctly, what's going on in the UK, there's even efforts to make a law that would actually ban what you're doing. In the United States, we have lots of laws that ban therapies that involve people under 18, but I don't think a single state yet has banned it for adults who individually on their own make a decision that they want to go in and get the therapy of their choice. America as yet has not banned that, although there was an effort in California a year or so ago to go in that direction that ultimately got scuttled. But is that what you're facing in the UK, is the potential ban for even adults?
Yes, it is. It would be a national ban in the UK. That's what they're aiming to do. Probably similar to what they have done in Germany recently. And of course, Malta in 2016 was the first European state to ban it for everyone.
Did they originally ban it just for children, these various countries, and now they've extended it to adults, or they just started with a complete ban?
No, they headed straight for the top, and they have just outlawed it for everyone.
Right. So just so most of my listeners are aware of this issue. We've covered it before, but just to be clear for anybody listening to this anew, what we're talking about, and please tell me if I misstated it, is that if an adult wants to go get counseling for based on their sexual orientation and wanting to discuss their orientation, wanting to potentially reduce homosexuality, feelings of homosexuality, etc., these countries want to make it illegal for that person to voluntarily go talk to a therapist about this.
It's slightly more nuanced in Germany, I would have to say. You might be able to discuss it with a qualified therapist, but the therapist would have to prove that you weren't there under any kind of pressure or duress. But in the United Kingdom, what we call the United Kingdom Council for Psychotherapy argued way back in 2014 that it is an ethical offense to change or attempt to change or reduce a person's sexual feelings. So it's an ethical offense.
Mm-hmm. And they like to point to the history of all kinds of things that were supposedly done back in the 60s and 70s to get people to reduce their homosexuality feelings as the basis for these bans. So they talk about electronic shock therapy, etc. What are some of these practices that were done in the past, which truly, in your opinion, are inappropriate?
Well, anything that coerces somebody into behaving a certain way must raise ethical concerns. Electroshock therapy was used for decades, actually, but only by medics. So in this country, those associated with the Royal College of General Practitioners or the Royal College of Psychiatrists, they would be the people who did that. But of course, in the late 50s, 60s, that was ended. There's not ever been any ministry initiative that have ever used these things. But curiously, in this country, the UK government cites corrective rape for lesbians as a conversion therapy technique. And when we did a Freedom of Information request, or one of our organizations did this Freedom of Information request, of course, it was revealed that nobody has ever been prosecuted in this country, number one, for such a thing. And number two, of course, it's already illegal. So it's hard to understand why these extreme behaviors are being brought into a definition, unless it's really to put all of this in a very extreme context. So we have side by side electroshock therapy, frontal lobotomies, castration, all of these things, and then talking therapy. It's all defined as conversion therapy, which seems bizarre.
Yeah, well, and they've done, the LGBT activists and the left have done a great job of convincing the public that all these conversion therapies are absolutely wacky stuff and basically laughable. I mean, if you talk about they've done an amazing PR job on conversion therapy of getting it tossed out as a bunch of nut jobs.
And it kind of drives a truck through both conversion and therapy. It's a nonsense term. It's a pejorative term, actually invented by Dr. Douglas Helderman, who is an activist, a well-known activist within the American Psychological Association. And way back in the 90s, 1991, 2, 3, he started using this term, which is, really gone global. And now with the United Nations, of course, they appointed not so long ago a specialist who would concentrate on sexual orientation and transgender issues. He's taken this to the next level and is trying to make sure that the United Nations influences all of its member nations to outlaw conversion therapy, so-called.
Yeah. It really comes down to the fact, to a scientific question, seems to me, which is whether you're born this way or not. The LGBT activists and the left are absolutely want everyone to adhere to the notion that you're born this way. And if you're born this way, then it does make sense that these type of therapies, even talking therapies perhaps, are inappropriate, because if you're born this way, what is there to talk about?
Well, as recently as 2019, Ghana and other scientists, certainly in the United Kingdom, used one of the largest data samples that has been known, and has clearly come out saying that there is no gay gene, and that the genetic contribution to all of this is very minimal. Even the Royal College of Psychiatrists here in the UK talk about the fact that the operative thing are postnatal conditions. In other words, they have walked away from this idea of genetics. And I would have to ask, which of these professional mental health bodies actually say that it's totally about what we inherit? And I think you would find that they don't actually say it. This is the strange thing. Even Professor Lisa Diamond, who would be a well-known lesbian activist in the APA, has clearly stated that, born gay is dead. This is not something that we need to be using to argue the rights of gay people to exist. So why are we doing it?
Yeah, it's a scientific fallacy. There's twin studies which demonstrate that when one twin is gay, the majority of the time the other twin is not gay. We've now mapped the human genome, and they've yet to find any gay gene. But yet, for some reason, many in that community cling to it because they feel like that's the only way that they'll get acceptance, is to believe that you're born this way. And I've argued on this show many times that no, there can absolutely be love and acceptance without having to manufacture this idea that you're born this way, when clearly the science proves the opposite.
Sure. I think it might be the Instagram generation, James, in my opinion. This is a younger group of folks who maybe don't value scientific debate as some others in society would. I often find that they are not well informed about the scientific facts around this. And globally, certainly in the Western world, this kind of received information seems to be a real hindrance in terms of knowledge that can, allow different points of view, different ideologies surely to coexist. But what we have now is a kind of monoculture that is determined to impose one point of view. They rule who does the research. They rule who gets the research money. They are the ones who, judge the research. They are the ones who allow or disallow the publication of things. It's something that I think it's about viewpoint discrimination, and there is no longer this competition for ideas where, so to speak, iron strikes iron and different points of view come together and hammer it out because of their mutual confidence in scientific methodology. We've lost that, and it's a dangerous sign.
I'll give you a great example that just came up recently when Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook was testifying in front of Congress. He was asked about the fact that they took down some doctors talking about hydroxychloroquine and its positive effects as a prophylactic against COVID. And he said, well, that went against the CDC. The CDC, Center for Disease Control, does not support hydroxychloroquine. And so that's why we took it down. It's like, whoa, you're saying if you disagree with what the government says, we take it down? The government is the ultimate arbiter of the truth? That's scary stuff. And here's Mark Zuckerberg testifying in front of Congress and saying that that's how they're conducting Facebook. They will take it down if you put up something that disagrees with what the government says.
Well, that's music to my ears, actually, James, because we've had our run-in the last couple of weeks with Facebook. We had, I have a program, and we'd been weekly broadcasting for a number of weeks, and we decided to do some adverts to promote this material. So, we paid our money. Facebook checked it all out, approved the adverts, and they ran for the full length. I think it wasn't massive, but 67,000 people were reached through it all. And then there were complaints from the LGBT lobby, or some of them. And the reaction was that Facebook immediately banned 6 of them, having taken the money, having individually approved of them, and then tagged them all as hate speech. And what that taught me was it's only if you're successfully starting to speak out and you upset one side of the house are you going to get into trouble with Facebook. But otherwise, they're quite happy to take your money and carry on.
Yeah. And the cancel culture is all on the left. You don't have people on the right wanting to cancel out free speech. It's all on the left. So these companies end up, regardless of what their particular political beliefs are, they end up listening to the left cancel culture because they don't want to have a campaign to convince people not to advertise on Facebook, to protest against Facebook because it's giving voice to whether it be what you guys are doing or anything else. And this has happened to you guys. They've tried to cancel you out by going to your banking relationships and getting them to cancel their business relationship with you.
Well, it all started with PayPal. So for more than a decade, we've had a very amicable relationship with PayPal, and all of our websites would pay attention to PayPal in terms of getting donations and all the rest of it. All of the accounts were simply unilaterally ended. And with PayPal, there's been no discussion. There's no way of contacting them. If you phone them, they just say, COVID-19, they haven't got the staff, etc. So that was ended. Shortly after that, MailChimp. All our MailChimp accounts were simply ended overnight, something that is really, business critical for us in terms of communication.
Wow. And, most people probably know, but MailChimp is what allows you to do, wide email blasts, right?
Yep. And we stuck by the rules. We weren't blasting who we shouldn't, where there was no spam. These were all people who were subscribed, but they've just ended it. And then Barclays Bank, a big multinational bank that I've banked with all of my life, basically, again, simply decided, well, they gave us 2 months' notice, but they've said they will end all of our accounts on the 14th of September.
And you haven't been able to have a conversation with any of these entities?
Well, I had a conversation in the sense that I emailed Barclays and said, excuse me, why? What have we done? And they came back and said, because of Article, 9 or something. And so I said, well, what's that about? And they came back saying, well, it allows us to cancel the account and we don't have to tell you why.
Yeah.
And that's their answer. So,
well, and I'm a big free market advocate. So, companies choosing to do business with whoever they want to choose to do business with, I'm okay with. But I think these companies are making a huge mistake to be, choosing to do business based on political views and canceling out business relationships based on political views. I mean, it's just crazy.
Well, and, with respect, if you go into the history of Barclays Bank, they were doing a lot of business with Cuba. They did a lot of business with Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe, and people were objecting to that. They were active during the apartheid years in South Africa. I could go on in terms of money that, was lost after World War II. Barclays has been implicated at every level, but they seem to have a very selective left-wing morality when it comes to this issue.
Well, I think, don't you also point out that they do business in the Middle East where homosexuality is illegal?
Yeah, I forgot. That's probably the most important.
So I'm not sure that it's really left. If they truly were left-wing, then they would not be doing business with these Middle Eastern countries. So either it's that business is just too big, or it's because they are concerned about blowback from these LGBT activists, and they're reacting to that concern. They don't want there to be some type of internet protest movement against Barclays.
Well, you're probably right. In our case, this was all sparked off in the month of June, during Pride Month in the UK. There was a Twitter campaign to end our Barclays account. And of course, Barclays Bank is a big funder of and a big headliner in terms of Pride in London. It pays for a lot of it. So it all works together. And there's certainly evidence of that on the Twitter feeds around this issue.
So the problem in the UK is you've got a national government that wants to ban this, though. So these, what we call LGBT activists, they've got the support of the Church of England and the British government behind the idea that adults should not be permitted to seek the counseling of their choice.
Well, you're correct when it comes to the Church of England. So in 2017, the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Archbishop of York decided that banning so-called conversion therapy should be a priority. It was opposed by many, but it won the day and they've gone ahead with that. As far as the government is concerned, I think it's important to recognize that Theresa May's government was very proactive in this. In 2018, they promised they would ban it. Now, we've had Brexit, we've had COVID and all the rest of it. We're more than almost 2.5 years on. And I think this is what is angering activists. They want to see this banned, and the government appears to have been slow-footed on this. And it's true, Boris Johnson has said they're going to ban it, but you notice they didn't do it in this parliamentary sitting. So we're waiting to see what will happen in September. And very interestingly, the press here revealed through the Telegraph that Downing Street seemed to be going towards a ban to appease the LGBT folk who were upset because of a backtracking that the government seemed to be carrying out on self-recognition for transgender folk. Now, in other words, there's a lot of politics about this, about the politics of gender, basically. So we're waiting to see where they're going to go. In the meantime, we are really concerned that folks who call themselves ex-gay or ex-lesbian or were formerly transgender, whatever label you want to put on it, they want to be able to speak out and share their stories.
And are they not being given a voice?
It's very difficult to get a voice. I did an interview on the BBC on Monday that was aired. They will only ever interview those who are unhappy. They seemingly refuse to interview anybody else. It's very difficult to get a soundbite into, the so-called mainstream media in this part of the world.
So let's get into a little bit of what the therapy is that you provide. But, I think we've established that you're not born this way based on the science and the genetics, the twin studies, the mapping of the human genome. We certainly would have heard about a gay gene. So it's something that occurs through nurturing. Clearly, it's something mental. It's in the head, clearly. It's in the brain. The APA, the American Psychologist Association or Psychiatric Association, no longer calls it a mental disorder, which you could quibble about whether it's a disorder or not, but it clearly is in the head. So the question is, what causes it? If you're not born this way, what causes someone to have homosexual proclivities?
The short answer, it's never one thing. It's most likely going to be a combination of things. It can be either big T or small t traumas. So things that happen to people. I can introduce you to clients who did suffer abuse and after that did undergo a great deal of confusion in their lives. And this was often reinforced in school contexts where people called them gay. And in the end, they just kind of gave in and said, well, I must be if people are saying that about me. So sometimes it's trauma. Sometimes it's interventions that are unwelcome. And often it's just about the fact that a young boy misses out in learning the kind of social technique of becoming united with the rest of the male tribe, so to speak. They kind of will say they feel they're on the outside. They're always looking in. Maybe they don't get to, be good on the sports field. Maybe they are more inclined towards the arts. That causes a problem and they feel alienated. So, those are the things we look for. We listen to what clients bring. We first of all have to decide why they've come. Are they under pressure or are they there because they really want to talk this through? Secondly, we need to understand their past, what's happened in their lives. And then thirdly, we have to understand their goals and make sure that they are realistic and something that is achievable.
If they come there stating that they're having these proclivities and they don't want to have them for religious reasons, they've read the Bible and they think that it's a sin to lay with another man, as they say, is that an appropriate reason to come to you and you guys will provide them services for that reason?
I think we would have to be sure that that is a personal conviction that's held by the person that we're talking to. But surely we have to be sensitive to a person's worldview. We have to understand what the kind of primary values are that a person holds, because these are very important. For some people, those values are more primary than the sexual urges. We know that there are people in this world who can live chaste lives and who live above these very human feelings because they're so convinced that that's what they should do. That's their personal conviction. So if they come with a religious conviction, then I think we need to take that into account. But we have to be careful to make sure, that this is not something oppressive, but this is something that they voluntarily take on board. If there's a priest or a pastor that is directing them to us, well, that's a different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
But may I just say that 50% of the people who do come in my direction either come from other faith or no faith backgrounds.
Yeah, I mean, religious freedom is essential. I know it is in America. I assume it is maybe not to as great an extent in the UK, but religious freedom is something that everyone seems to recognize as an important value. So if someone is coming there because they want to adhere to their religious faith, that should be protected, right?
Absolutely, it should be. I really like what the US group, the Alliance for Therapeutic Choice and Scientific Integrity, teach. They talk about safety, sexual attraction, fluidity, exploration in therapy. And that's, in essence, what we do. We explore the fact that sexuality is fluid. We don't hold with the idea that gender is fluid. But many of us testify to the fact that, sexuality can be all over the place. And we have to learn how to discipline it. We have to learn how to make sure it goes in the direction that we want it to go in, so that we're not, victim of our own desires.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we recognize treatments for sexual addiction, for sexual perversion, for all kinds of things related to sexuality. But the left wants to then draw a line and say that, yeah, you can counsel about all those things, but don't counsel somebody to reduce feelings of attraction to the same sex.
I think that this is maybe the product of the kind of binary model that the LGBT activists, I think, successfully convinced us all about. This idea that the world is made up of straight and gay and a few bis in between. But in reality, there are many people who are mostly heterosexual, but they are not totally heterosexual. So my question is, if that is the case, why is it that we are privileging only those who want to be homosexual and want to find, completion for the homosexual side of themselves? Why are we discriminating against those who recognize that they have a homosexual side, but they want to maximize their heterosexual side? That's what's being made illegal in these countries. And I don't think it makes sense. It doesn't recognize human experience that shows without doubt that human sexuality is fluid.
On your Wikipedia page, it states, this is the Core Issues Trust organization, which you run, correct? On the Wikipedia page, it says Core Issues Trust states it believes human sexuality is in both men and women is a choice. Is that accurate?
No, James, it isn't accurate. And that changed within the last 3 months when this very concerted and well orchestrated campaign began. All of a sudden, the Wikipedia page was changed. Everything that was there that had been built up was taken down. And it basically says that we are proponents of conversion therapy. This is a pejorative term. We want nothing to do with it. Our attempts to change the Wikipedia page have failed. We just haven't been able to do it. Yeah,
Wikipedia is another thing that's really important. You don't hear as much about Wikipedia as you do Facebook and Instagram, but it's just as important. I mean, when you do a Google search, one of the first things that pops up is always the Wikipedia page. And for the most part, people trusted. I have always generally trusted it, but you got to start wondering now, oh my gosh, is this the next thing we got to be concerned about? Is these type of ideologies infecting Wikipedia? So sticking with that issue, because it stuck out at me, because I had a feeling you were going to say no, that homosexuality is not a choice. And that's the LGBT community likes to pigeonhole you into. They say, well, either it's born this way or it's a choice. And they say, come on, who would choose this lifestyle? Obviously, it's not a choice. Therefore, you must be born this way. And they forget the middle ground, which is, no, it's not a choice, but you're not born this way. It's something that happens in early childhood development. And there's lots of studies and lots of research and lots of evidence that proves or seems to prove that early childhood development, including traumas, are the things that can lead to homosexuality and gender dysphoria, etc. So that's the area that they don't want you to talk about or think about, even though that's most likely where the truth lies. And so that's why they want to say that you guys believe that human sexuality is a choice.
I did not choose the homosexual feelings that I experienced, but I did come to a point after I'd married my wife. I came to a point where I realized I had choices around those feelings, even though I didn't choose them. And my choice was exercised by, in my case, getting professional help. And the thing is, James, I was given good professional help. They challenged me, but they worked with me. But the point is, they respected my personal autonomy, the goals that I was setting for myself. They were willing to work with me on that. Even if they didn't agree fully with me, they let me do it. And because of that, I found my way out. And that's what's changing now. It's the therapists that are imposing the therapeutic outcome on clients. They accuse people like myself of being directive in our counseling, but I'm afraid that is not the truth. We explore sexual fluidity and we look at the options. Do you want to be gay? Do you want to go in that direction? Well, that's your choice. Do you want to go in this direction? Well, let's work on it and see where we go. There's choice here, and we respect autonomy and we respect people's goals. But in the new dispensation, the only thing that's on offer is gay affirming therapy. And if you say you have homosexual feelings, then the simplistic response is, well, then you are gay. And if you don't identify as gay, you're being inauthentic and hypocritical. And that's what's got to change. And I believe it will.
Tell us the therapy that you received. And what did you ultimately, if you don't mind sharing, what did you ultimately identify was the cause of you having those feelings?
Well, what I would say, the therapy that really helped me ultimately was about the fact that in each case, the therapist I worked with was a salient individual. This was somebody I could respect, somebody who I liked, somebody who I felt, I was inspired by. I could receive encouragement. I could receive challenge and correction, all of those things. So the relationship was really important. For me, if you're asking what caused it in my life, it's maybe difficult to understand this, and this is just one of the main factors, but I grew up in a household where my older brother died before I was born. And my family always referred to him as John. But later in life, just before my mother died, she told me that my brother's name was actually Michael. And it's difficult for people who maybe haven't thought about this, but this idea of being a replacement child is a really important factor in this kind of life that people experience. And it seems like, for me, what happened, my father was so invested in his firstborn that when I came, it's kind of like he gave me to my mother emotionally. Now, this is not a blame that emotional barrier. It's like he couldn't quite commit to me. And because of that, I felt I was more pushed towards my mother. And actually, that's what happened. There was a feminizing process. I was confident around males. I was underconfident around men and boys.
Yeah. Sorry, you were saying you were confident around females and not confident around males.
That's it. That's what happened. And because of that, femininity was not mysterious. Masculinity was mysterious. And because it was mysterious, I was drawn to that. So when puberty hits, this becomes sexualized. And it feels very natural to be drawn towards the same sex because you know all about the opposite sex. And then the problem is you really think your problem is going to be solved by a sexual encounter. But lo and behold, that might even happen. And then the recognition comes for many, not everyone, that actually it's not a sexual problem. It's like there's an emotional need for connection and identity with masculinity that is trying to find fulfillment by going in this direction. And people in this position feel as though it's going to be resolved sexually, when in fact it's kind of a mirage, because underneath that sexual desire is actually an emotional desire and longing that is needing to be satisfied and isn't. So, how to deal with it? Well, it's to deal with the emotional issue and to move away from the sexual behaviors, because they aren't going to solve the problem.
And how were you able to deal with the emotional issue? What was the therapy that allowed you to recognize all the things that you just said and move past them?
Simple things like assertiveness training. So I had been a very compliant individual, and I think it was kind of an attempt to make sure nobody ever knew what I really thought. So I was yes for the yes people and no for the no people, and I was lost in the process. And it wasn't until I learned, the importance of assertiveness and the importance of knowing who I was, that I had an identity that is relevant and significant in this world. I have a contribution to make. And, I can stand shoulder to shoulder with other human beings and argue my case. Those are the kind of social skills that I had to learn. And you can't learn all of that from a therapist. So there was a lot of work that I had to do, but I received good training and inspiration. And then, there's a spiritual dimension to this as well. So because I journeyed as a Christian, I discovered, I made an amazing discovery that there are men in this world who are sensitive beings and, are willing to interact with you, and their motive is not sexual. It's just they want to have a good time, or they actually do want to get to know you. And when I discovered that reality, it's kind of like the penny began to drop, and I no longer saw myself as different, and I began to see myself as, part of the tribe of men. And you get different kinds of men, but I fitted there. And that confidence, so that, the loss of low self-esteem, that determination to be assertive, those things made a huge difference in my life.
Was part of it forgiving your father?
To be honest, it was more forgiving my mother. And I know this is going to fall into the trap of this caricature of dominant mother and absent father. I'm just trying to share how it was in my family. My mum, she was a great mum. Don't get me wrong. Both of my parents were wonderful people, but there was something too close between my father and between my mother and myself. It kind of intruded, and it brought some resentment that I experienced. And again, it was about assertion, getting to the point where, I had to know the boundaries between who I am, who my mother is. I'm not there to take care of my mother. I'm not there to, they are my parents. She is my mother. She is my father. I am who I am. Learning those roles was really important. It sounds very simplistic, I know, but I needed that.
And why did you seek the counseling to begin with? What were you, why did you feel the need to change?
As a young man, I was called to the ministry. I answered that call. I started training as a minister. And then there was an experience that wasn't full on sexual, but showed me that there was a propensity within myself that I was not comfortable with. So I did the classical thing and tried to just repress it. Cut a long story short, I genuinely fell in love with the woman I am still married to 42 years later. We married, we had our children, but there was something unresolved in my life. And it just got to a point where I realized I had choices to make and I needed to do something. And as a family, because my wife knew about my situation, we knew as a family that I needed to get help. I grew up in a place and at a time where it wasn't a done thing to talk about these things. It was difficult to talk about these things. And so, I didn't make progress until I reached out and I asked for help. And that's my fear. That is being denied to whole generations today. They're not allowed to ask for help. They simply have to, certainly in Great Britain, they simply have to accept the fact that they are gay.
No, it reminds me of underground abortions. That's where we're heading with this. That you would need to meet in secret in a basement to talk about this.
That's exactly. So I was put out of the British Psychodrama Association because they felt my views on homosexuality were not correct. I went through an appeal process. I was on a BBC program before I left the studio. I was told I was under investigation. A year later, I had lost my right to complete my training. They said that I could come back if I changed my ideas about homosexuality. That's where it's gone in this country.
That you could come back to where? To
complete my training
to become a pastor.
No, to become a psychodrama psychotherapist. It's
I see.
Specific modality that I was interested in doing. My point in mentioning it is, it's kind of a thought crime thing. If you don't think the right thoughts, I submitted a 40-page document about why I believed homosexuality is something that needs to be, have a response therapeutically to. I never got an answer. I think they could have said your science really is not up to scratch, or, you don't understand methodology, or you've miscited things. None of that. They simply ignored it. Because we're not dealing with science. We're dealing with ideology in this country.
Not just your country, but unfortunately. But yeah, I was just kind of jotting down that there's a number of reasons why someone may want to, who has homosexual proclivities, may want to seek counseling for them or to reduce them. So we talked about religious reasons. some people might scoff at that and say, oh my gosh, you're using the Bible to shame gays or whatever. But, again, religious freedom is important. I don't happen to subscribe to the idea that there's a God that is paying attention to what your sexuality is or would judge you based on that. But that's my personal view. There's, there's Christians and Jews and Muslims, et cetera, that are religious and choose to follow those religious practices. So religious reasons are a legitimate one. This would prohibit somebody for getting treatment for religious reasons. You could have a family, loving wife and children, but be having these urges to be with a man, and it would destroy your family, your relationship, etc., for that to take place. So you want to reduce those feelings because you love your wife and you love your children. You want to maintain your family. You wouldn't be able to go for any type of therapy for that reason, right? Yeah. For some, they might just choose. You might not be married, but they might just say that I prefer to live a straight lifestyle. I would like to have biological children with a spouse, and raise a child with a loving mother and a father. Just they choose to want that, and therefore it seems to me perfectly legitimate to get therapy for that. And then a fourth reason is just a general mental stability, that they might be struggling with this and uncomfortable with this and having these thoughts and not knowing how to deal with them or think about them or whatever, and wondering where they come from and why am I having these thoughts and so on. I mean, as you talked about, there's childhood traumas that can cause this, and dealing with underlying childhood traumas, no matter what they may cause later, getting treatment as an adult for traumas that you experienced as a child is a very important type of therapy. I mean, it's a very common type of therapy.
And what about the person who has experienced abuse and knows that as a result of that, they became confused and then went in this direction towards homosexuality that they later regretted? What are we honestly saying? That we are going to deny them access to professional help that might change them? At the moment in the UK, it doesn't matter for what reason, if you seek to change somebody's sexual orientation, this is an ethical offense. This is poorly thought out in terms of
the only possible defense for it, in my view, and even this I'm not sure would be a full defense, would be if it was absolutely proven that you're born this way, that it's not in your head, that it's something else, and you're born this way, and therefore no therapy is going to change how you're born this way. But again, as we've talked about, in my view, it seems to be proven that you're not born this way. So there's absolutely no basis at all to ban this type of therapy.
Often, critics will tell us that, this is not a disease, so it doesn't need to be cured. But, it's a false argument. I may be grieving and I may seek the help of a professional to get through that. Or I may be struggling with, a syndrome that is not a mental health issue in the sense that it is a disease or mental health issue from that point of view, but it simply needs guidance and help from somebody. And I think this is a similar thing. I don't see these people who come through my door as being diseased. I see these people as having very human aspirations and goals, and they want to explore the possibilities around these goals. And I think we need to take them seriously. We need to see them as autonomous individuals and respect their goals. And no therapist, and frankly, no government, should be regulating what people can and can't do.
Thank you again to Mike Davidson. If you want to learn more about his group, you can go to Core Issues Trust. Just search that on Google, Mike Davidson at Core Issues Trust, to learn more about that. Thank you so much, Mike, for giving your time to our show, and good luck with your efforts in the UK. Thank you to Michael Parker, our producer, and to Jake Wall, our intern. We'll be back soon with another episode of The Hidden Truth Show.
Thank you for listening to The Hidden Truth Show with Jim Breslow. You can find us at hiddentruthshow.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Hidden Truth Show. Join us again next week for another episode of Hidden Truth Show with Jim Breslow.